Tommy Norris is finished. Not just at MTech's, not just in business, but in everything he thought defined him. The empire he built with sweat, cunning, and ruthless determination has crumbled, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and alone. Cooper faces the consequences of a single violent mistake that could cost him his freedom. Loyalties will shatter, family ties will stretch to breaking, and the world that once revolved around money and power will feel unrecognizable. In Landman Season 2, Episode 10, the final hour isn't about winning. It's about survival, reckoning, and the brutal cost of ambition. The camera doesn't flinch on Tommy as he stands outside MTech's for the last time, the building looming behind him like a monument to everything he's lost. His tie is loose, his shirt untucked, and the weight of the boardroom decisions, the family betrayals, and the failed oil deals presses down on him like a physical force. Every step away from the office feels heavier than the last, as if the ground itself has shifted beneath his feet. He thought he could control everything, the deals, the people, even the chaos. But the truth hits harder than any competitor or adversary ever could. He was never in control. Now, stripped of his title, his authority, and the empire he fought to preserve, Tommy is left to confront a reality that doesn't bend to his will. The silence that fills this moment is deafening. There are no dramatic confrontations, no explosions of anger or shouting, just the hollow echo of a man who has spent years building a life on leverage, influence, and fear, only to realize that all of it is gone. The office that once held his victories now seems cold, empty, and alien, an inanimate witness to his collapse. Inside, the lights are dim, the desks deserted, and the smell of polished wood and stale coffee reminds him of the hours he spent trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. The empty hallways are a mirror of his isolation. Each closed door represents an opportunity lost, a bond broken, a promise unkept. The aura of power that clung to him like a second skin has vanished, leaving a hollow man trying to navigate a world where his name no longer carries weight. Meanwhile, Cooper's situation is a storm that's been quietly building all season, and it's about to break with devastating force. What began as an impulsive act of protection has spiraled into a nightmare of legal consequences and personal betrayal. The man who once carried himself with a swagger of invincibility now faces the terrifying reality of jail. He can hear the gavel before it strikes, see the bars in his mind, feel the suffocating weight of a decision that can't be undone. Ariana, the woman who imagined a life built together, now stands at the edge of that storm, forced to choose between hope and survival. Cooper's reckless choices have not just endangered himself, they've thrown everyone who loves him into a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty. Family dynamics have reached a critical breaking point. Angela's attempts at guidance have faltered, leaving Annesley adrift and unprepared for the harshness of the world she was promised she could inherit. Tensions simmer between siblings, between parents and children, and between Tommy and everyone who once trusted his judgment implicitly. Every interaction feels charged, every glance weighted with unspoken accusations. Words that once carried warmth and direction now cut with sharp edges, revealing fractures that have grown over years but are now impossible to ignore. Every character is a pressure cooker of emotion. Anger, guilt, fear, and desperation that threatens to explode at the slightest provocation. In the midst of this chaos, the oil fields themselves seem to mourn the collapse of the empire they once fueled. The rigs stand silent against the Texas sky, machines frozen mid-operation as if the land knows the weight of what has been lost. Tommy's world has always revolved around extraction of oil, influence, and control. But now the very ground he fought to command feels alien, resistant, and indifferent. Every flashback to earlier triumphs, victories over rivals, strategic acquisitions, and boardroom domination serves as a haunting reminder of what was, a cruel juxtaposition against what is. The power he wielded is no longer tangible. It exists only in memory, echoing through empty halls and desolate landscapes. Even minor characters feel the pull of this collapse. Associates who once laughed at Tommy's jokes now avoid eye contact. Employees whisper behind closed doors, unsure whether loyalty to a fallen executive is worth personal risk. The silence, again, is deafening. Not just in what's spoken, but in what is deliberately left unsaid. Every shot, every pause, every lingering gaze is a study in suspense and dread. The trailer has already told us that this episode won't be about action or heroics. It's about the psychological impact of loss, the meticulous unraveling of a life built on fragile foundations, and the terrifying realization that some consequences are permanent. Tommy doesn't just lose a job, he loses identity, purpose, and the one arena where he felt invincible. Cooper doesn't just face jail, he faces the end of a future he thought was secure. The Norris family isn't just fractured, they're teetering on the edge of collapse, with every lie, every misstep, every impulsive decision piling up into a weight too heavy to bear. As the camera lingers on Tommy's face, lined with exhaustion and disbelief, and Cooper pacing in legal limbo, the audience is left with a clear message. There's no turning back. The world has shifted, the power structures are gone, and everyone is now scrambling for survival. Every element of this first section sets the stage for a finale defined not by triumph, but by reckoning. Landman, Season 2, Episode 10, doesn't promise resolutions. It promises consequence. It doesn't promise victories, it promises survival. And for Tommy, Cooper, and the rest of the Norris family, that may be the cruelest challenge of all. Tommy sits alone in the dim light of his home, staring at the remnants of a life he once controlled. The office, the deals, the carefully crafted reputation, all gone, as if erased in an instant. His mind is a battlefield. Every decision he's made this season, every calculated risk, every act of manipulation flashes before him, and he realizes that the consequences can no longer be contained. There is no escape, no angle to exploit, no ally capable of undoing what has been set in motion. He feels exposed, raw, and painfully human for the first time in years. Power, influence, and money were his armor, and without them he is vulnerable in ways he has never confronted before. The silence in the room is oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards, as if the house itself is weighing him down, reminding him that he is alone in the aftermath of everything he has lost. Cooper's fate hangs like a noose around the entire family's neck. The consequences of his actions, the fight, the brutality, the impulsive justice he delivered, have caught up with him. The legal threat is looming, unrelenting, and it doesn't just hang over him. It hangs over everyone connected to him. Ariana, whose faith in him once seemed unshakable, now faces the agonizing decision of loyalty versus survival. The dream of marriage, of love, of a life beyond the chaos of oil and power feels distant, fragile, and nearly impossible to reclaim. She watches Cooper navigate his precarious legal situation, her heart heavy, realizing that a single moment of rage has the power to erase years of trust and happiness. The reality of consequences hits harder when those you love are at risk, and the family is forced to grapple not only with their own survival, but with the collateral damage of one man's reckless choices. Angela, too, finds herself trapped in a web of failure and regret. Her attempts to guide Annesley have faltered, leaving her daughter unprepared for the harsh realities of the world around them. What was meant to be empowerment has turned into a quiet disaster, and Annesley's growing independence, once a source of pride, now feels fragile, incomplete, and dangerously vulnerable. The failure of parental guidance has created fractures that ripple through the entire family. Miscommunication, withheld truths, and simmering resentment have amplified into tension so palpable that it feels like the air itself is ready to ignite. Conversations become minefields. Every word carries hidden weight, every silence laden with accusation. The family, once bound by loyalty and shared ambition, teeters on the edge of disintegration. In the midst of this tension, Tommy's relationships are under scrutiny like never before. His confrontations with friends, rivals, and even allies reveal the cracks in his network of influence. Trust, once a currency he wielded with precision, has eroded. Former partners hesitate, wary of aligning with a man who is no longer untouchable. Opponents, sensing weakness, circle like vultures, ready to claim advantage. The power vacuum left by Tommy's fall is immediate, brutal, and unrelenting. The stakes are no longer about strategic maneuvering, they are about survival, about figuring out who will endure when the old world has vanished. Every interaction is a test, every conversation a potential trap. In this fragile landscape, misstep equals disaster, and everyone knows it. Meanwhile, the emotional toll on the Norris family intensifies. Tommy's anger, once a tool for control, now becomes erratic and destructive, directed at anyone within reach. His frustration with Cooper, with Ann Insley, with Angela, with even himself, manifests in sharp words and tense confrontations. These eruptions are not cathartic. They are symptomatic of a man unraveling under pressure, a family teetering on the edge of implosion. Even those who wish to support him are uncertain how to do so, and the lack of a clear path forward only heightens the tension. The audience can feel the emotional strain as if it were a physical weight pressing down, creating a sense of dread and urgency that permeates every scene. Tommy's personal identity crisis is mirrored in the environment around him. The M-Tech's offices, once symbols of power, now appear empty, cold, and distant. The oil fields, once teeming with activity and promise, feel lifeless, as if the land itself has sensed the fall of the empire it once sustained. Even the physical spaces that were once his domain now serve as reminders of loss, isolation, and the fragility of power. The contrast between past triumphs and present despair is stark, creating a visual metaphor for the internal collapse Tommy experiences. Every office desk left empty, every rig standing silent, every corridor devoid of energy reinforces the permanence of his loss. As the season finale unfolds, the narrative focuses not on resolution, but on the inexorable weight of consequence. The choices Tommy, Cooper, and the Norris family have made cannot be undone, and the reality of those choices is relentless. The suspense builds not through physical action, but through anticipation, psychological tension, and the emotional unraveling of characters who have always been larger than life. The audience is drawn into a world where every misstep, every decision, every burst of rage or moment of weakness carries irreversible impact. Cooper sits alone in a stark, unwelcoming room, the walls bearing the sterile coldness of legal authority. The faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead underscores the gravity of the moment. Every tick of the clock echoes like a countdown, a reminder that the consequences of his actions are no longer theoretical. They are inevitable. His hands shake slightly as he rereads the police report, the incident at the club, the details of the assault, each word cutting deeper than any physical wound could. Cooper has always believed in his ability to navigate trouble, to manipulate situations to his advantage, to rely on instinct and influence. But here, those instincts fail. The law does not bend for him, and no amount of charm or coercion can change the fact that he crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. For the first time, he faces absolute vulnerability. Ariana's absence in the room is deafening. Her heartbreak is not silent. It vibrates in the spaces between Cooper's thoughts, in the gaps of his recollections, and in the reality of their shattered plans. Their wedding, once a symbol of hope and future stability, is now a fragile, intangible memory. Ariana's love, once unwavering, is now a mirror reflecting the consequences of a single, reckless act. Cooper realizes that his choices have not only imperiled his freedom, but have also forced the people he cares for most to confront the brutal reality of disappointment, betrayal, and survival. Every moment he spends in this liminal space of impending judgment is heavy with anticipation and fear. The audience can feel the dread as if it were a physical presence, suffocating, inescapable. Meanwhile, the Norris family spirals further under the weight of cumulative crises. Tommy, stripped of M-Techs, struggles to anchor himself in the storm of uncertainty. He drifts between anger and despair, oscillating between lashing out at those around him and retreating into moments of paralyzing self-reflection. He realizes that his identity, once inseparable from power, has been violently severed. The man who orchestrated deals, managed crises, and controlled narratives is now powerless, unmoored, and exposed. Angela and Anninsley observe him with a mix of fear, pity, and frustration, knowing that their ability to intervene is limited. Words fail, strategies falter, and family unity, once the bedrock of their resilience, crumbles under pressure. Every interaction is a negotiation of emotional survival, every glance a subtle plea for acknowledgement, every pause a silent admission of weakness. The trailer's visuals emphasize this disintegration through every shot. Empty offices, quiet homes, and abandoned rigs paint a landscape of isolation, a mirror to the character's internal collapse. The camera lingers on Tommy's expression as he surveys the world that no longer bends to his will. And in those moments, the audience senses the enormity of the fall. The oil fields, which once symbolized control and prosperity, now feel desolate, indifferent, and merciless. The industry that made him powerful offers no comfort. The very land he has fought over seems to reject him. The visual language of decay and abandonment underscores a theme that runs throughout the finale. Consequences are permanent, and the past cannot be reconstructed, no matter the skill, influence, or desperation. In parallel, Cooper's interactions with legal authorities heighten the tension. Every question he faces, every silence he breaks, every misstep is amplified in a courtroom that offers no room for improvisation. The law, unlike the corporate world or the oil fields, operates on unyielding rules. The moment of confrontation with the consequences of violence is cold, mechanical, and unrelenting. Cooper's confident facade cracks with every passing hour, replaced by a gnawing anxiety and creeping despair. The audience experiences this suspense as if they are trapped alongside him, feeling the narrowing of options, the suffocation of hope, and the looming possibility of incarceration. Tommy's attempts to manage the fallout from Cooper's choices are futile. Even his strategic mind, honed over decades of negotiations and boardroom battles, cannot manipulate the forces now in motion. Friends, allies, and subordinates recognize his vulnerability and hesitate to commit loyalty in a world where the rules have shifted. Former adversaries sense opportunity, and the thin veneer of control that Tommy once maintained begins to dissolve. The balance of power, once stable and predictable, is replaced by chaos and uncertainty. Every choice, every hesitation, every conversation becomes a moment of life-altering consequence. The emotional tension between family members escalates further in private moments. And Inslee struggles with her own role in the family's unraveling, caught between dependence and independence, between fear and ambition. Angela battles guilt and frustration, aware that her inability to guide her children effectively has contributed to the current crisis. The fracture lines between Tommy, Cooper, Ariana, Angela, and Ann Inslee are now sharp and visible. Dialogue, where it exists, is sparse, measured, and heavy with subtext. Silence carries as much weight as words, amplifying the suspense and leaving viewers on edge. Tommy Norris stands in the ruins of his former life, a man stripped bare not just of power, but of purpose. Themtech's offices, once a fortress of his dominance, are now a memory etched in emptiness. The boardroom battles, the carefully calculated deals, the influence he wielded like a weapon, all meaningless now. Every plan he ever relied on has collapsed, leaving him exposed and fragile. His hands tremble slightly as he touches the polished wood of a desk that no longer belongs to him. This is more than loss. It is identity stripped away, the very core of a man who measured himself by control, influence, and success. For Tommy, this is the abyss. The silence is almost unbearable. There are no confrontations, no dramatic music, no explosions of action to distract from the reality of his situation. The absence of noise magnifies the weight of what has happened. Every decision he ever made, every compromise, every risk, now returns to him like a shadow he cannot outrun. He cannot negotiate his way out of this, cannot call on favors, cannot rely on industry knowledge to protect him. Power, once his defining feature, is gone. And with it, the shield that made him untouchable. He feels naked, isolated, and terrifyingly human. The audience witnesses a man forced to confront the truth of who he is without the trappings that once defined him. Meanwhile, Cooper's legal nightmare reaches its zenith. He sits in a sterile courtroom, the harsh fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished floor, the sound of the judge's gavel echoing in his chest like a heartbeat he cannot escape. Every witness, every piece of evidence, every recorded act of violence weighs on him with crushing inevitability. Cooper has always relied on impulse, confidence, and bravado. But here, none of those tools can save him. He faces not just a sentence, but a reckoning. A moment where choices collide with reality and the consequences are absolute. Ariana watches from the gallery, her face a mixture of fear, heartbreak, and disbelief. Their plans, their dreams, the wedding, the future, they hang by a thread, and every moment of delay tightens that thread until it threatens to snap. Family fractures become impossible to ignore. Angela's efforts to guide Annesley falter, leaving her daughter unprepared for a world that is unforgiving and brutal. Miscommunication, resentment, and years of unresolved tension erupt in moments of emotional conflict that slice through the veneer of family unity. Words carry the sharpness of knives, silences hum with accusation, and every interaction feels like navigating a minefield where one misstep could detonate irreparable damage. Tommy's frustration and anger, no longer controlled or calculated, spill outward in unpredictable ways, straining the bonds that once held the family together. The audience is drawn into a tension so palpable it feels like a living thing, pressing against them, refusing to relent.